The message arrived at midnight. Every screen on Earth went dark for exactly 3 seconds. Then the symbols appeared. Strange writing that no human had ever seen, yet somehow everyone understood its meaning. Earth had been summoned. The Galactic Council demanded humanity's presence. Failure to appear would result in immediate judgment. Ambassador James Cole stood in the United Nations headquarters, staring at the holographic invitation that still floated above the main console. He was 52 years old, a former military officer turned diplomat, and he had spent his entire career preparing for moments that never came. Now the biggest moment in human history had arrived, and he had exactly 72 hours to prepare. "They are real," whispered Dr. Amara Osei, the lead xenolinguist. Her hands trembled as she analyzed the message. "Everything we suspected. The signals we detected. The anomalies in deep space. They are all connected to this council. How many species are we talking about?" Cole asked. "The message mentions over 800 member civilizations. Some have existed for millions of years." Amara looked at him with fear in her eyes. "James, we are children walking into a room full of ancient gods." Cole did not respond. He was already thinking about strategy, about survival, about how to protect a planet that had just discovered it was not alone in the universe. The ship they sent was enormous. It appeared in Earth orbit without warning, a vessel so large it cast shadows across entire continents. The design was elegant and terrifying, covered in symbols from hundreds of different civilizations. This was the Council's transport, and it had come to collect humanity's representative. Cole boarded alone. The Council had been specific. One human, one voice, one chance. The journey took 3 days. Cole spent most of that time studying everything humanity knew about extraterrestrial civilizations, which was almost nothing. He practiced speeches. He prepared arguments. He tried to imagine what he would face when he arrived. Nothing prepared him for the reality. The council station was built around a dying star. Its structure stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, a massive ring of metal and crystal that housed representatives from every corner of the galaxy. As the transport approached, Cole counted hundreds of different ship designs docked at various ports. Some were beautiful. Some were terrifying. All of them made humanity's greatest achievements look like children's toys. "Ambassador Cole," the ship's artificial voice announced, "you will now be escorted to the Grand Chamber. The council is assembled and waiting." The doors opened, and Cole stepped into a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. Beings of every shape and size moved past him. Some walked on legs. Others floated in containment fields. A few existed as pure energy, their forms shifting and pulsing with alien light. None of them looked at him. He was beneath their notice. Guards appeared. Tall creatures with armor that seemed to grow from their skin. They gestured for Cole to follow, and he did, walking through passages that told the history of galactic civilization in murals and monuments. He saw images of wars that had destroyed entire solar systems. He saw celebrations of peace that had lasted for millennia. He saw the faces of species that had risen, flourished, and disappeared while Earth was still forming from cosmic dust. Then the doors to the Grand Chamber opened, and James Cole understood true insignificance. The room was impossibly vast. Seats rose in concentric circles toward a ceiling lost in darkness, and every seat was filled. 800 species. Thousands of representatives. Millions of years of combined history. All of them looking down at a single human standing on a circular platform at the center of the chamber. Silence fell like a physical weight. "Human," a voice boomed from above. Cole looked up and saw the supreme arbiter, a being whose body seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. "You have been summoned to answer for your species' violations of galactic law. How do you plead?" Cole's heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. I was not aware that humanity had committed any violations. We have only just learned of your existence. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Arbiter's form solidified with what might have been surprise. Ignorance is not a defense. Your species has been monitored since you first achieved nuclear capability. Your expansion into your solar system has been observed. Your transmissions have been catalogued. You are classified as a developing civilization and placed under protection protocols. The Arbiter paused. You have violated those protocols. How? Cole asked. A holographic display appeared around him, showing images that made his blood run cold. Human ships. Not the ones currently exploring Mars and the asteroid belt, but others. Vessels that looked decades more advanced than anything publicly known. They were shown entering star systems, landing on planets, interacting with alien species. 17 times, the Arbiter continued, your ships have entered protected space. 17 times, your people have made contact with species designated as off-limits. 17 times, you have disrupted the natural development of civilizations that were not ready for outside influence. Cole stared at the images, his mind racing. He recognized none of these ships, none of these missions. Either humanity had developed secret programs he knew nothing about, or something else was happening. I have no knowledge of these missions, Cole said carefully. As Earth's official representative, I would have been informed of any deep space activities. Then your governments have deceived you. Or you are lying to us. The Arbiter's tone hardened. Either way, humanity must answer for these crimes. The penalty for violating protection protocols is severe. Your species could be quarantined to your home system for 10,000 years. Or eliminated entirely. The chamber erupted. Species shouted in languages Cole could not understand. Some seemed to be calling for humanity's destruction. Others appeared to be arguing for mercy. The noise was overwhelming, a wall of alien sound that threatened to crush him. Cole raised his hand, and somehow silence returned. Before you judge us, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber, I have questions. You say humanity violated your laws, but you also say we were being monitored, protected, watched. If we were under such careful observation, how did these alleged violations occur without your intervention? The Arbiter hesitated. It was a small hesitation, barely noticeable, but Cole caught it. The incidents occurred in sectors with limited surveillance coverage. Convenient, Cole replied. You have technology that can summon ships across the galaxy, build stations around stars, and monitor developing civilizations for centuries. But you somehow missed 17 separate incidents of humans traveling to protected worlds? More murmurs. This time, Cole detected a different tone. Curiosity, suspicion, not all of it directed at him. Furthermore, Cole continued, I noticed that the evidence you have shown involves ships, but no actual humans. No faces, no voices, no biological confirmation that the beings in these vessels are actually from Earth. He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. Has anyone here actually met the humans responsible for these violations? Has anyone spoken to them? Confirmed their identity through any means beyond visual observation of their ships? The silence that followed was different, heavier, more dangerous. A representative from one of the lower tiers stood. Its body was covered in what looked like living metal, shifting and reforming with each movement. The human raises a valid point. The evidence presented is circumstantial. Before we condemn an entire species, we should require more substantial proof. The evidence is sufficient, another voice countered. This came from a section where beings of fire and shadow sat together, their forms flickering in the chamber's light. Humans are primitive and aggressive. Their history proves their capacity for violence. We should eliminate the threat before it grows. Eliminate an entire species based on recordings of ships? The metal-skinned representative sounded incredulous. That standard would condemn half the civilizations in this chamber. Arguments exploded across the chamber. Cole watched as alliances formed and broke in real time. Species that had sat together for millennia suddenly turned on each other. The Council, which had seemed so unified in its condemnation of humanity, was fracturing before his eyes. Cole waited. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best strategy was patience. Let your opponents argue themselves into corners while you watched and learned. The Arbiter called for order, but the damage was done. Doubt had been planted. Questions had been raised. And James Cole stood at the center of it all. A single human who had walked into a room full of ancient powers and somehow, impossibly, had begun to change the conversation. This council will recess, the Arbiter finally declared. The human will be held pending further investigation. But mark my words, Ambassador Cole. The Arbiter's form shifted, becoming sharper, more threatening. If your species is responsible for these violations, no amount of clever arguments will save you. The law is absolute, and the law will be enforced. As guards led him away, Cole allowed himself a small smile. He had bought humanity time. Now he needed to discover the truth, because someone had been using human ships to violate galactic law, and Cole was determined to find out who and why before the Council decided to hold all of humanity responsible. The game had only just begun. James Cole sat in a holding cell made of light. The walls were not solid, yet he could not pass through them. The floor beneath his feet hummed with energy that seemed alive. Outside his cell, alien guards watched him with eyes that held no emotion, no curiosity, no mercy. 3 days had passed since his first appearance before the Council. 3 days of silence. 3 days of waiting while his mind churned through possibilities. The door materialized, and a figure entered. Cole had never seen this species before. The being stood roughly human height, with skin that looked like polished stone and eyes that glowed with soft blue light. It moved with careful grace, as if every step was calculated for maximum efficiency. Ambassador Cole, I am Investigator Prime Velen. I have been assigned to examine the evidence against your species. Cole stood, maintaining eye contact. Investigator, I hope you are here to tell me you have found the truth. I am here to find the truth. Whether it helps or destroys you remains to be seen. Velen gestured, and a holographic display appeared between them. Let us begin with what we know. 17 incidents. Ships bearing human markings entering protected systems. Contact with species under observation protocols. Clear violations of galactic law. Ships bearing human markings, Cole repeated, but not confirmed human crews. Correct. We have no biological evidence of human presence. Velen tilted his head. This is unusual. Normally, we would have some form of contact, communication, physical trace. These ships entered, interacted briefly with target species, and departed, almost as if they wanted to be seen but not identified. Cole leaned forward, as if someone wanted to frame humanity. That is one possibility. But consider this. New images appeared. Each of the species contacted in these incidents shares a common characteristic. They were all on the verge of extinction. Natural disasters, disease, resource depletion. Without intervention, none of them would have survived another century. This was new information. Cole studied the images carefully. 17 dying worlds. 17 species facing extinction. And someone had gone to them, appearing to be human. What kind of intervention occurred? Cole asked. That is what makes this case so strange. Velen pulled up detailed reports. The ships did not bring technology. They did not offer weapons or advanced science. They simply arrived, assessed the situation, and left behind basic survival resources. Food production methods, water purification techniques, medical knowledge appropriate to each species' development level. They helped them. They violated protocol by interfering with protected civilizations. Under galactic law, it does not matter whether the interference was beneficial. Any contact with pre-spacefaring species disrupts their natural development. Velen's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. But yes, they helped them. Cole sat back, processing this information. Someone had been traveling to dying worlds, providing aid, and making it look like humans were responsible. The question was whether this was meant to destroy humanity, or to use humanity as a cover for illegal humanitarian missions. Has anyone investigated who might want to help these species? Cole asked. That line of inquiry is complicated. Velen paused. Many of these protected species were scheduled for observation, but not intervention. The Council determined that their extinction would be unfortunate but natural. Several member civilizations objected to this decision, but were overruled. So someone decided to help them anyway, using human ships as disguise. Possibly. Or humanity developed secret programs and genuinely conducted these missions. Velen studied Cole with unsettling intensity. The simpler explanation is often correct. Your species has a documented history of compassion mixed with deception. Your governments frequently conduct operations in secret, even from their own people. Cole could not argue with that assessment. What happens now? The investigation continues. I have requested access to Earth's space program records, both public and classified. Your governments have 48 hours to comply. Full transparency will help your case. Resistance will be viewed as evidence of guilt. After Velen departed, Cole was left alone with troubling thoughts. He knew Earth's space programs. He had been briefed on classified missions that the public never saw. Nothing he knew matched the scale of what the Council was describing. 17 deep space missions to other star systems would require technology humanity did not possess, unless they did possess it, and he simply did not know. Hours later, he received his first communication from Earth. The message was brief, encrypted, and deeply disturbing. Ambassador Cole, this is Director Helen Marsh. United Earth Intelligence. We have reviewed the evidence presented by the Council. We cannot explain it. Our records show no missions matching these descriptions. Our technology is not capable of reaching other star systems. But we have discovered something else. The ship designs in the Council's evidence match theoretical plans developed by our Advanced Research Division. Plans that were never built. Plans that were classified at the highest level and seen by fewer than 20 people. Cole read the message twice, then a third time. Someone had accessed Earth's most secret designs and built ships based on them. Ships that were then used for missions to protected worlds. Director Marsh, Cole recorded his response. I need the names of everyone who had access to those plans. I also need you to investigate any unusual disappearances among our science and engineering communities over the past decade. Someone took our designs and created vessels we never knew existed. They may still be operating somewhere beyond our reach. The investigation on Earth produced results faster than expected. Within 24 hours, Cole received a list of names, and one stood out immediately. Dr. Vincent Reed, Chief Engineer of Earth's Advanced Propulsion Research Program. Disappeared 4 years ago. Official record listed him as deceased in a laboratory accident. Body never recovered. Cole brought this information to Velen. Dr. Reed had complete access to our most advanced ship designs, Cole explained. He was brilliant, possibly the smartest engineer humanity ever produced. He was also known for his outspoken criticism of law, international decisions to focus space. development on commercial interests rather than exploration and humanitarian efforts. Velen processed this information. You believe this Dr. Reed faked his death, built ships based on his own designs, and conducted unauthorized missions to protected species? I believe it is possible, but he could not have done this alone. Building advanced spacecraft requires resources, facilities, crew. Someone helped him, or some organization, perhaps one that shares his views about humanitarian intervention. Velen's expression shifted in a way Cole could not interpret. Ambassador, there are factions within the Council who believe that the protection protocols have become instruments of cruelty rather than preservation. They argue that watching species die when we could save them makes us complicit in their extinction. Are you suggesting Council members might be involved? I am suggesting nothing. I am presenting possibilities. Velen moved toward the door. But I will tell you this. If evidence emerges that connects Council factions to these violations, using human technology as cover, the political consequences will be severe. Many powerful civilizations have invested heavily in maintaining the current system. They will not appreciate being embarrassed. Cole understood the warning. The truth might save humanity, but it might also trigger a conflict far larger than one species standing trial. I need to speak with the Council again, Cole said. I have new evidence to present. Your request will be considered. But be careful, Ambassador. In my experience, those who uncover uncomfortable truths often become targets themselves. Someone went to great lengths to make these missions appear human in origin. They will not be pleased to see their work unraveled. After Velen left, Cole stood alone in his cell of light, thinking about Vincent Red, a man who had believed so strongly in helping others that he had faked his death, built impossible ships, and traveled across the galaxy to save dying worlds. If the theory was correct, Reed was either the greatest hero humanity had ever produced or a criminal whose actions might doom his entire species. Perhaps he was both. Cole began composing his address to the Council. He would present everything he had learned. He would demand a proper investigation. He would force the ancient powers of the galaxy to confront the possibility that their own members had used humanity as a convenient scapegoat. It was a dangerous move. But James Cole had not come to the Council station to play it safe. He had come to save his world. And he was just getting started. The Grand Chamber was different this time. When James Cole entered, he noticed that many seats were empty. Representatives from dozens of species had chosen not to attend. Those who remained watched him with expressions, ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. The Supreme Arbiter's form flickered with agitation. Ambassador Cole, you have requested to address the Council with new evidence. This is highly irregular. The situation is highly irregular, Cole replied. I have discovered information that changes everything about this case. Then speak. But be warned. If this is a delay tactic, the Council will view it as an admission of guilt. Cole took a deep breath and began. 3 days ago, I stood before you knowing nothing about the crimes humanity was accused of committing. Today, I stand before you with answers. But the truth is more complicated than anyone expected. He activated the holographic display, showing the image of Vincent Reed. This is Dr. Vincent Reed, a human scientist who disappeared 4 years ago. He was officially declared dead, but we now have evidence suggesting he is alive and responsible for at least some of the missions you have shown. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Cole continued. Dr. Reed was a genius in propulsion technology. He was also deeply troubled by what he saw as humanity's failure to use our growing capabilities for good. He believed we had a moral obligation to help others, even if our governments disagreed. Cole changed the display, showing ship designs. These are theoretical plans Dr. Reed developed before his disappearance. Compare them to the ships in your evidence. The match was unmistakable. The vessel configurations, the engine signatures, the hull compositions. The ships that had violated galactic law were built from Dr. Reed's designs. So you admit human responsibility, the Fire and Shadow representative called out. Your scientist committed these crimes. I admit that a human may have been involved. But Dr. Reed did not have the resources to build multiple interstellar vessels alone. He did not have access to the advanced materials required, and he could not have navigated to 17 different protected systems without help from someone who knew exactly where those systems were located. Cole turned to face the section of the chamber where he suspected allies might sit. Someone gave him the resources. Someone gave him the maps. Someone used his idealism and his technology to conduct missions they could not conduct themselves. The chamber exploded with noise. Species shouted accusations at each other. Old rivalries surfaced in seconds. The Arbiter called for order repeatedly before the room finally quieted. These are serious allegations, the Arbiter said slowly. You are suggesting that members of this council conspired with your scientist to violate our own laws. I am suggesting that the evidence points in that direction. I am asking this council to investigate fully before condemning humanity for crimes we may not have committed alone. Cole paused. Unless the council would prefer to ignore uncomfortable possibilities and simply punish the easiest target. Silence. The insult was deliberate and calculated. Cole needed to provoke a response, to force the hidden players to reveal themselves. It worked. A representative rose from the upper tiers. Cole had not noticed this species before. They were tall, impossibly thin, with bodies that seemed to be made of woven light. When they spoke, their voice resonated on frequencies that made Cole's teeth ache. I am Elder Counselor Narration of the Weave. My species has served on this council for 12,000 years. In that time, we have watched hundreds of civilizations rise and fall. Some were destroyed by war, some by disease, some simply faded away. Nyrin moved down toward Cole's platform with flowing grace. But many were destroyed by our own inaction, by protection protocols that were created with good intentions, but have become instruments of cruelty. The chamber fell absolutely silent. 17 species were dying, Nyrin continued. The council voted to observe their extinction rather than intervene. Several of us objected. We argued that the protocols should allow for humanitarian exceptions. We were overruled. The Elder's form pulsed with what might have been grief. When Dr. Reed approached us with his technology, we saw an opportunity. Human ships could reach these worlds without violating the letter of our laws, because humans were not yet bound by those laws. And if anyone investigated, the blame would fall on a species that did not yet have a voice in the council to defend itself. Cole felt the floor shift beneath him. Not physically, but in every other way that mattered. The truth was emerging, and it was more complex than he had imagined. You used us, he said quietly. We saved 17 species who would otherwise be extinct. Over 40 billion sentient beings are alive today because we acted when the council would not. Nyrin's voice carried no apology. If that is a crime, I accept judgment. But do not pretend that humanity is simply a victim in this situation. Dr. Reed knew exactly what he was doing. He believed, as we do, that watching people die when you could save them is the greatest crime of all. The Arbiter's form had solidified into sharp, angular shapes. Elder Nyrin, you admit to conspiracy against council law, to using an unregistered species as instruments of illegal intervention, to deceiving this body for years. I admit to choosing life over protocol. Nyrin turned to address the full chamber. Look at the evidence of what these missions accomplished. Look at the species that were saved. They were not given advanced technology. They were not corrupted by outside influence. They were simply given the tools they needed to survive challenges that would have destroyed them. Many of them do not even know they were helped. They believe they saved themselves. Holographic images appeared, showing the 17 worlds. Cole watched as the display revealed thriving civilizations, species that had overcome their crisis and were now developing naturally. Children playing in streets that should have been ruins. Cities standing where there should have been only graves. "This is what your laws prevented," Nyrin said softly. "This is what your protocols would have destroyed. Ask yourselves if you can look at these images and tell me we were wrong." The silence that followed was unlike anything Cole had experienced. He watched as representatives throughout the chamber struggled with the evidence before them. Some seemed moved. Others appeared furious. The council was fracturing along lines that had probably existed for centuries, finally exposed by this crisis. "What would you have the council do?" the metal-skinned representative asked. "Abandon all protocols? Allow any species to intervene anywhere they choose? I would have the council recognize that laws must serve life, not the other way around." Nyrin's form began rising back toward the upper tiers. "But that is not my decision to make. It is yours. All of yours." The arbiter called for another recess. As representatives filed out, many stopped to look at Cole with expressions he could not read. Some seemed to view him differently now. Others watched him with increased suspicion. Investigator Velen appeared at Cole's side. "Ambassador, the situation has become extremely complicated. You think so?" Cole allowed himself a small, bitter laugh. "I came here to defend humanity against false charges. Now I discover we were unwitting accomplices in a conspiracy to save dying worlds. I am not sure if we should be angry or grateful. Perhaps both." Velen guided Cole away from the main platform. "You should know that Elder Nyrin and their faction are not the only players in this game. There are those who wanted the protected species to die, who benefit from a galaxy with fewer competitors. They will not accept this outcome quietly." "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that you remain cautious. The truth has been revealed, but the consequences have not yet played out." Velen's stone-like face showed something that might have been concern. Powerful forces will now act to protect their interests. Some may decide that eliminating the human ambassador would simplify matters considerably. Cole nodded slowly. He had suspected as much. The moment Nyrin confessed, Cole became dangerous to multiple factions. To those who wanted humanity punished regardless of guilt. To those who feared the larger implications of what had been revealed. To anyone who preferred the comfortable status quo over the messy truth. "I need to contact Earth," Cole said. "My people deserve to know what is happening. I will arrange a secure communication channel. But Ambassador, consider your message carefully. What you say now will shape how humanity views its place in the galaxy for generations to come." Cole thought about that as he walked back to his cell. Humanity had been used, yes, but they had been used to save lives. Dr. Reed, wherever he was, had chosen to risk everything rather than watch innocent beings die. It was the most human thing Cole could imagine. Perhaps that was the real message. Not that humanity had been manipulated, but that even in manipulation, humans had acted true to their nature. They had helped when no one else would. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The attack came at night. If such a concept existed on a station that orbited a dying star. James Cole was asleep in his holding cell when the explosion ripped through the corridor outside. Alarms screamed in frequencies designed for dozens of different species. Emergency barriers materialized across passages. And in the chaos, shadows moved with deadly purpose. Cole pressed himself against the wall as his cell's light barriers flickered. He had no weapons, no armor, no training for combat against alien assassins. He had only his mind and whatever luck the universe chose to grant him, the cell wall dissolved. 3 figures entered, their forms wrapped in technology that bent light around them, making them appear as distortions in reality rather than solid beings. Cole could not identify their species. Perhaps that was the point. "Ambassador Cole," one of them spoke, voice distorted beyond recognition. "You have become a problem. For whom?" "For those who prefer stability over justice. For those who built empires on the corpses of species the Council chose not to save." The figure raised a weapon Cole did not recognize. "Your death will be attributed to human enemies. Your species will be blamed for killing its own representative. The confusion will allow the Council to proceed with sanctions. Everything will return to normal." Cole forced himself to remain calm. "You are afraid of what we represent. Not our technology. Not our military. You are afraid that humanity might inspire others to question the system you have maintained for millennia. Your species is insignificant. Then why are you here with weapons instead of lawyers?" Cole took a step forward, knowing it might be his last. "You came in the middle of the night, after a secret trial failed to produce the results you wanted. You are desperate, and desperate beings make mistakes." The lead assassin hesitated. That hesitation saved Cole's life. The far wall exploded inward. Dr. Vincent Reed stood in the breach, holding a device that hummed with barely contained energy. He looked older than his photographs, weathered by years of running, hiding, fighting. But his eyes burned with fierce determination. "Get down, Ambassador." Cole dropped as Reed fired. The weapon released not energy, but light. Pure, concentrated illumination that tore through the assassin's cloaking technology and exposed them for what they were. They were not organic at all. They were constructs, artificial beings designed for covert operations. "Automatons," Reed said, moving to Cole's side. "The consortium uses them for dirty work. Disposable, untraceable, deniable. The consortium? A coalition of species that profit from the current system. They control trade routes, resource extraction, technology licensing. Every time a protected species dies out, they claim the remains. Mining rights, archaeological salvage, genetic databases." Reed's voice dripped with disgust. "They have been feeding on the corpses of extinct civilizations for centuries." More automatons appeared at the far end of the corridor. Reed pulled Cole behind cover as weapons fire scorched the walls. "How did you know I was in danger?" Cole asked. "I have been monitoring the trial since it began. When Nyron confessed, I knew the consortium would move against you. Eliminating the human ambassador, before you could testify further, serves multiple purposes for them." Reed fired another burst of light, disabling 2 more attackers. "I could not let that happen. You started all of this. The missions, the violations. I saved 40 billion lives that the Council had sentenced to death by inaction." Reed met Cole's eyes. "I am not sorry for what I did. I am only sorry that you and Earth got caught in the middle." They moved through the station's damaged corridors, Reed leading the way with obvious familiarity. Cole realized that the scientist had been here before, probably many times. He knew the Council station's layout, its security systems, its weaknesses. "Where are we going?" "To the one place where you can speak and the entire galaxy must listen. The emergency assembly hall. It is only used during existential crises. When activated, it broadcasts to every member world simultaneously." Reed smiled grimly. "I think this qualifies as an existential crisis. They encountered more resistance. Council security forces, confused by the attack and unsure who to target. Reed talked them past some checkpoints and disabled others with technology that seemed impossibly advanced." "How did you build all of this?" Cole asked during a brief pause. "The ships. the weapons, this equipment. The Weave provided resources. The Narration faction gave me star charts and access codes. Other sympathetic species contributed materials and expertise. Reed checked a device on his wrist. You asked me once why someone would help dying worlds using human ships as cover. The answer is simple. They needed someone who was not yet bound by council laws. Someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove. And you fit that description. I watched my government argue about budget allocations while species across the galaxy died. I decided to stop arguing and start acting. Reed gestured down a side passage. This way. We are close. The emergency assembly hall was massive, designed to accommodate the most important gatherings in galactic history. Its systems were independent of the main station, powered by their own generators, protected by barriers that even the consortium's automatons could not breach. Reed activated the broadcast array. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, screens flickered to life. Ambassador Cole, it is time. Cole stepped onto the central platform, looking into cameras that would carry his image to trillions of beings. He had spent his career preparing speeches, practicing diplomacy, learning the art of careful words. But this moment required something different. This moment required truth. My name is James Cole. I am the representative of Earth, a world you barely knew existed until recently. I came here to answer charges of violating your laws. What I found instead was evidence of a much greater crime. Images appeared around him, compiled by Reed during years of investigation. Trade routes that connected extinct species' former territories. Consortium facilities built on worlds that should have been preserved as memorials. Profit reports that tracked revenue generated from the remains of dead civilizations. For centuries, powerful factions within your council have profited from extinction. They have used your protection protocols not to preserve developing species, but to ensure those species remained vulnerable. When they died, their resources became available for exploitation. Their technologies were reverse engineered. Their genetic material was harvested. The gallery of horrors continued. Species whose extinction had been listed as natural disasters, but who had actually been deliberately prevented from receiving aid. Observer stations that had watched civilizations fall while transmitting detailed information about their remaining valuables. A system designed to look like benevolent protection while actually serving as the galaxy's largest graveyard. Dr. Vincent Reed violated your laws. Elder Narration and the Weave violated your laws. They saved 17 species who were meant to die. They disrupted a system that was working exactly as certain parties intended. Cole's voice rose with passion he had not intended. And now those parties are trying to silence everyone who knows the truth. They sent assassins to kill me tonight. They are probably trying to kill others as we speak. He pointed directly at the cameras. But you are all watching now. Every world. Every species. The truth cannot be buried. The question is what you do with it. Cole paused, letting his words settle. Humanity is young. We are primitive. We make terrible mistakes. But we came to the galaxy with one belief that seems radical to many of you. We believe that when someone is dying and you can help, you should help. Not because the rules allow it. Not because you profit from it. Simply because it is, right? Reed appeared at his side, standing in view of the cameras for the first time. I am Dr. Vincent Reed. I built the ships. I conducted the missions. I accept whatever consequences this council decides to impose on me personally. But I will not apologize for choosing life over protocol. And I will not remain silent while the architects of extinction try to paint themselves as defenders of law and order. The broadcast continued for another hour. Cole and Reed presented evidence, answered questions transmitted from distant worlds, and watched as the galaxy slowly awakened to truths that had been hidden for millennia. When it finally ended, both men stood exhausted on the platform, surrounded by security forces who had arrived too late to stop the broadcast, but still uncertain what to do now. "What happens next?" Cole asked quietly. "Revolution," Reed replied. "Or total collapse." "Possibly both." He looked at Cole with something like respect. "You handled yourself well, Ambassador." "I was not sure if Earth's representative would be up to the challenge." "Neither was I." Cole looked out at the empty hall, thinking about the billions of beings who had just learned their civilization was built on graves. "Do you think it was enough?" "I think we gave the galaxy something it desperately needed. A choice. They can continue as before, or they can demand change." Reed shrugged. "What they decide is up to them. All we could do was speak the truth and hope enough people were ready to hear it." Outside the hall, they could hear shouting. Not attacks this time, but arguments. Debates erupting across the station as species confronted species about what they had just witnessed. The first tremors of the storm that was about to sweep across the galaxy. Humanity had arrived at the council expecting judgment. Instead, they had delivered it. The storm was just beginning. 3 months after the broadcast, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. The consortium collapsed within weeks as member species withdrew, terrified of being associated with the exposed crimes. The Supreme Arbiter resigned in disgrace when evidence emerged connecting the position to centuries of corrupt decisions. Elder Nyron's faction, once a marginalized voice for reform, now held significant influence in the restructuring council. And James, Cole stood on Earth for the first time since his journey began. The crowds that gathered at his return stretched for kilometers. People who had watched the broadcast, who had seen their ambassador stand before the galaxy and speak truth to ancient power. They see, heard, wept, and reached toward him as if touching his hand might connect them to the larger universe humanity had suddenly become part of. "You are a hero to them," Dr. Reed observed, standing beside Cole as they watched from a secure balcony. "Possibly to the entire galaxy. I did not do this alone." "No, but you stood in the chamber when it mattered. You asked the questions that needed asking. You gave them a face to remember." Reed looked tired but peaceful, a man who had finally set down burdens carried for years. "The Council has dropped all charges against you and Earth. They are calling it a misunderstanding." Cole laughed bitterly. "A misunderstanding. Centuries of profiting from extinction, and they call it a misunderstanding. They need to save face. The alternative is admitting that their entire civilization was built on a foundation of corpses." Reed shrugged. "Political realities do not change simply because truth is revealed. But this is a start." The formal invitation arrived that afternoon. The reformed Galactic Council, operating under new protocols that Nyron's faction had helped draft, requested Earth's presence as a full member. Not an observed species. Not a protected primitive. A full partner in galactic civilization. President Marsh called Cole personally to discuss. "They are offering us everything we dreamed of," she said, her image flickering through the quantum link. "Trade access, technology exchanges, diplomatic recognition. We would go from unknown to major player in a single generation." "There will be conditions," Cole replied. "There always are. But the alternative is remaining isolated while the galaxy reshapes itself around us. Whatever happens next, humanity needs a seat at that table." Cole thought about the 17 species saved by Reed's missions. 40 billion lives that would have ended in darkness, now looking up at stars they might someday reach. He thought about the consortium's victims, species whose names were forgotten because there was no one left to remember them. He thought about what humanity could become if they embraced this opportunity. "I will go back," Cole said, "but on our terms. We join as equals, not as charity cases grateful for acceptance. And we bring our values with us. The belief that life matters, that helping others is not a crime to be regulated, but a duty to be celebrated. You really think they will accept that? I think they do not have a choice. The old system is broken. They need new ideas, new perspectives. They need species who have not been shaped by millennia of compromise and corruption. Cole smiled. They need humans. The return journey took 3 days as before. But this time, Cole did not travel alone. Earth sent a full delegation. Scientists, diplomats, artists, philosophers. Representatives of every culture and nation, united for the first time in their history by a common purpose. They were going to help build a new galaxy. The council station had changed. The damage from the attack had been repaired, but the real changes were deeper. New species filled seats that had been empty for centuries, civilizations that had been dismissed as too young or too primitive to have a voice. The protected worlds themselves sent observers, watching as the system that had nearly killed them transformed into something better. Elder Nyrin greeted Cole personally. Ambassador, welcome back. The being of woven light seemed stronger somehow, more vibrant. Much has changed since your departure. I noticed. The new protocols seem promising. They are a beginning, not a solution. Nyrin led Cole toward the Grand Chamber, where the Reformed Council waited. We have ended the worst abuses. We have opened membership to species previously excluded. But changing laws is easier than changing hearts. There are still those who believe the old ways were better, who resent humanity for disrupting their comfortable arrangements. We expected resistance. Then you are wiser than many who came before you. Nyrin paused at the chamber doors. What you said during the broadcast resonated across the galaxy. The idea that helping others should be natural, not criminal. It seems obvious, yet many species had forgotten, or perhaps never learned. Where I come from, we have a saying, be the change you want to see. And are you prepared to be that change? Not just in words, but in actions? The Council will test you. They will push against your principles. They will try to make you compromise until your values become meaningless. Cole thought about the journey that had brought him here. The fear in the first chamber. The confusion as evidence emerged. The determination when he realized what was really happening. He had changed during this process, grown in ways he had not expected. I am ready. The chamber doors opened. This time, when Cole entered, the atmosphere was different. Not hostile, not welcoming, expectant. 800 species watching to see what humanity would do with the opportunity they had created. The new Supreme Arbiter was a being of crystalline structure, chosen specifically because their species had no historical connection to the consortium or its crimes. They spoke with a voice like wind chimes. Ambassador James Cole of Earth, you come before this council under historic circumstances. Your species has been offered full membership in galactic civilization. Do you accept this invitation? Cole stepped to the central platform, the same spot where he had once stood accused, the same lights bearing down on him. But everything else had changed. Earth accepts, but with a condition. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Species did not typically make conditions when offered council membership. State your condition. We require that the council formally acknowledge what happened. Not just the consortium's crimes, but the system that allowed those crimes to flourish. The protection protocols that were used as instruments of extinction. The decisions that prioritized order over life. Cole's voice carried clearly through the vast space. We require this acknowledgement not to punish anyone, but to ensure it never happens again. Because if we do not remember our failures, we are doomed to repeat them. The Arbiter considered this. Representatives whispered among themselves. Some seemed offended by the demand. Others appeared thoughtful. You ask us to confess sins that occurred before your species even existed. I ask you to honor the dead by ensuring their deaths were not meaningless. Every species that fell while the Council watched deserves to be remembered. Every world that became a consortium profit center deserves justice. Cole looked around the chamber. We cannot change the past, but we can acknowledge it. We can learn from it. We can build something better on its foundations. Elder Narration rose. The weave supports Earth's condition. We have already begun documenting the crimes of the old system. A full accounting should be made available to all species. Other delegates stood in support. The metal-skinned representative. Several members of the Singing Worlds. Species Cole had never interacted with directly, but who apparently respected what humanity had accomplished. The vote took only minutes. Earth's condition was accepted. Humanity became the newest full member of the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities that status implied. As applause echoed through the chamber, Cole caught sight of Vincent Reed watching from an observation gallery. The scientist who had started everything. The man who had risked his life and freedom to save species he had never met. Reed nodded slightly, then turned and walked away. His work was done. He had proven that one person could change the galaxy. Now it was time for others to continue what he had begun. Cole remained on the platform as delegates approached, offering greetings, proposing partnerships, extending invitations. Humanity had arrived as strangers accused of crimes. They were leaving as partners in a civilization that stretched across the stars. But Cole knew this was just the beginning. The real work lay ahead. Building trust, reforming systems, proving that humanity's values were more than just words. It would take generations. It might never be completely finished. That was okay. The journey mattered more than the destination. Outside the chamber, the dying star that powered the station continued its ancient burn. In a few million years, it would finally exhaust its fuel and collapse. But by then, the civilizations that had gathered around it would have moved on, built new stations around new stars, continued their endless journey through the cosmos. Humanity was part of that journey now, not as observers or subjects, but as participants, partners, friends. They had thought no one would come when they needed help. Then humanity arrived like a storm, tearing down corrupt systems and demanding something better, and the galaxy would never be the same.